Hello, friends, and welcome back to Dare Me to Prosper. My name is Avery, and I'm your host, and this is episode 40. And this was not the episode that I had originally planned for this week. However, there is just a lot going on collectively, politically, and it's just been on my mind a lot lately. And if you guys know me, I really like to speak from a place of things that are top of mind for me because I feel like it just is more effective. It communicates better if I am speaking to you from something that I am thinking about or going through in current time, rather than me just picking a topic off of, out of thin air and talking about that. So let's talk about Charlie Kirk. And I do not have an outline for this episode. I did not plan to talk about this, and I didn't want to have an outline. I really just wanted to talk about this event from a very human and very neutral political perspective. I do not consider myself a Republican or a Democrat. Since 2020, I have very much detached more and more from the idea of considering myself a part of either political party, because from my perspective, and of course, bear in mind, this episode is going to be 100% my opinion. This is my perspective on politics, where we are collectively in terms of, politics and government things, and what happened to Charlie Kirk. This is all my opinion. And this is my opinion from, like I said, a very neutral perspective, a spiritual perspective, and a human perspective. But I have distanced myself from politics and the two-party system because I just sensed over time, this is my belief, you don't have to align with me, I do believe that there is a small group of people, primarily men, I believe, that really sort of run the majority of our country in terms of the amount of power that they have. I believe there is a small group of people that through networking, through money, lots and lots of money, network, pull strings, influence with bribery, blackmail, do whatever they need to do to influence politicians and the people that they need to influence to get what they want. And what they want is continued power and continued money flow. And I'm talking billions upon billions of dollars. But what I'm saying is I believe that there is incentive for these two political parties to hate each other. I think that when you have a Republican Party and a Democratic Party that cannot stand each other, that are so busy fighting and arguing, and they're filled with hatred for the other party, that works in their favor. Because collectively, if we were to unite, if we were to get rid of this two-party system, and we were to just be a group of people who all had individual beliefs, and we could still vote on those beliefs, or we could make decisions, but without this system, this cage of the two political parties, do you understand how much power we would have as a nation, as a collective, than we have now as these divided groups who, depending on who's in office, are spewing hate at the other party. And my goal here with this episode is really just to remind people that we are not each other's enemies, no matter what you believe. And it's my belief that most people are good people who want good things for other people. Not everybody. There's awful, evil people out there, of course. Most people, though, I believe, are good at heart. And what we're disagreeing about is how to help other people, is what systems, what types of rules and regulations, what types of laws would help people the most, what is fair and right and loving. And those are the things that we don't always agree on. But what we do agree is that we are standing up for what we believe is best. And that's what we need to unite on, is this idea that we might disagree on how to go about it. But at the end of the day, most of us who are good people, we want things to be fair. We want things to be good. We want people to have access to things. We want people to be healthy. We want people to be able to support themselves. And I also think most of us can agree that in general, our government is not for us. And most of the decisions that are made and most of the laws that come into place are often made not primarily because they would be helpful to us, but primarily because in some way, shape, or form, they are helpful to the establishment. And everything that plays out on the stage, everything that plays out in the political world that we see can always be tied back to money, power, and influence. And I just think it's a good reminder because we get so worked up about, hating people groups or hating countries. And really what's going on is there is no bad country. There is no country that is filled with all bad people. What we do have are countries with bad and evil leaders. And I think we get so caught up in the political storylines of, what this country is doing to that country, when in reality, what's happening is it's these leaders attacking the people in another country. It's never people at war against other people, right? It's leaders and establishments and organized groups at war, not your everyday citizen. Across the world, you have a lot of people who don't have a lot of influence over the establishment that rules their country. So let's talk about Charlie Kirk more specifically. Personal beliefs, you don't have to align with me here. I did not agree with everything that Charlie Kirk said. However, I also do not believe he was a bad person. I believe that, like I just said, he was a person who was standing up for what he believed would help the most people. Of course, everybody believes something a little bit different about what would be best for most people. What he did have was a very large, influential following. He had a lot of ears. And what he was really good at was starting conversations that needed to be had. And I know there's a lot of conflict over different things that he said. And again, I'm not validating his beliefs. I don't consider myself a Christian, as you know, and a lot of the ideologies came directly from his faith. And honestly, it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter what I believe because my main drive home point is that we need to be very careful about hating people who have beliefs that are different from ours, especially when these are not evil people. We have a tendency, I've noticed, in American politics specifically, to create monsters out of people who we just disagree with. If there is a human being who is not actively harming someone and who just has a different belief than you do, this does not make them an evil person. And a lot of people will say, well, if they believe in abortion or if they believe in these gun laws, they're actively hurting people. And I don't think that is valid. I think each of us, again, have different beliefs based on what we think will benefit people. And I understand both sides of many of these issues. And so I want to get into this topic starting from a neutral perspective where you understand that I'm coming to this from a place of this is something that happened to a human being, regardless of your beliefs. Because I would like to believe that in my lifetime, we could at least get to a place where we are not assassinating people that we disagree with, that we are never cheering or celebrating someone's murder. Now, I can understand why people would feel much more strongly on this topic if we were, say, talking about a child molester, talking about a rapist, talking about a serial killer. And I do think there are consequences for people of such evil. This is not one of those times. What I want to say is it's my opinion that Charlie Kirk was assassinated not by an individual. First of all, logically speaking, it was 200, 300 yards. That is not a shot that just any old person could take and hit that accurately, okay? I don't believe this was Joe Smo off the street. I know that they are saying that they have caught the suspect. I do not believe that is the suspect. I fully believe that is the fall guy. I know they say there's a confession. I know they say his dad turned him in, whatever. I don't believe that's the guy. I believe that is a fall guy. I think it is very obvious that that is not the guy. I do not believe that Charlie Kirk was assassinated by some individual who was angry. I know that has happened. I don't think this was that case. I believe that Charlie Kirk was targeted and assassinated, not directly, but indirectly through a hire, most likely. But he was targeted by these individuals who did not like the fact that Charlie Kirk was gaining a lot of influence. Because again, whether it's liberal or whether it's conservative, any person that has a lot of influence that they don't have control over is a threat to them. So even if Charlie Kirk was a liberal, right, if he was a Democrat and he was speaking out, but he was not owned or ruled by anyone in the government politically, let's say he was speaking out in a way that directly contradicted, say, a Democratic president or the general beliefs of the Liberal Party, but he was still very much loved by people who voted Democrat. Same thing. Anyone that they cannot control, anyone that speaks out against what they advocate for, especially on such a large platform, they do not want. And they will take active steps to get rid of that person, right? Same thing that happened with JFK. And that's not news to anybody. This is well documented at this point. We don't talk about it a lot, which is quite interesting to me because I feel like we are now seeing history repeat itself where we have someone who says, no, I don't agree with you. I don't agree with you. Someone who really causes people to talk about issues in a way that doesn't align with what, quote unquote, they want. Because I don't know who they is. What I do know is that our government and every government on the planet is ruled through money, power, coercion, influence, sex. They have all been playing these games for a very, very long time. The only difference now is that it is more exposed than it has ever been in the past. We are able to see behind the curtain more. There is more whistleblowers, and because we have access to such quick information on the internet, on social media, we can learn about these things so fast in a way that they cannot contain. There is no algorithm that can completely shut down the knowledge. They cannot keep up with the amount of information that is spreading, and people are realizing what's really going on behind the scenes. And so, again, this is my personal belief, but I do not believe that the guy that they're saying, that's the fall guy. I believe there was likely a person or a team of people who had military background or some sort of significant weaponry background in order to execute that murder the way that they did. And the way that I believe, the way that I predict that things may unfold from here is I think this is going to be a historical moment, absolutely. I think that Charlie Kirk's assassination will be just as well known as JFK, MLK. You know, one of these figures whose death is eventually unveiled as a strategic political move by people in power behind the scenes, not an angry individual. And I think this moment, and there already is some conflict, some tension between party sides. However, there's also people that are coming together. Like there are people from both parties coming together and saying, you know what, even though I didn't necessarily agree with everything that Charlie Kirk said, or I didn't like him as a person, no one deserves this. His children were there. His wife was there. This was a personal, ruthless, violent attack. And I think most people who just have empathy see that and recognize that no matter what your political beliefs are, that this is not something that we celebrate. And I think those people are beginning to unite worldwide. Like I've said, this is not just American news. I mean, this news has gone worldwide. There are people in other countries protesting using Charlie Kirk's name against their own governments. This event, as horrific and horrible as it was, has spurred on a greater movement. And I don't think the greater movement is necessarily just things that Charlie Kirk stood for and believed. I think this greater movement is people standing up against this idea that we can just take out people that we don't agree with, this idea that free speech is dangerous, this idea that if you say things that people in charge don't agree with, they can just kill you for it. I think that is really the defining force that people are rallying around. Is not, I believe everything Charlie Kirk believed. It's, we don't want to live in a country that functions this way. And so, again, I just did a Patreon episode actually on the energies and predictive energies for September. And I'm going to do that moving forward. Moving forward, I'm going to do that monthly, where at the beginning of the month, we're midway through September now, so it was for the rest of the month in September, but at the beginning of every month, I'm going to do one of my Patreon episodes on predicting the energies of the upcoming month, both collectively and individually. And so again, join the Patreon if you want access to those 4 bonus episodes every month. You can see a list of all of the Patreon episodes that I've done so far on my website. There's a link to that in the show notes if you're interested to see what episodes you'll be getting. But I mentioned in that Patreon episode how we are in a time collectively, and astrology really points to this as well, we are in a time collectively of up, upheaval, of change, of transition. We are in that American Revolution type energy. And for a long time, people have been predicting that the end of 2025 was always going to be really intense, really chaotic, and really transformational historically. It's also a very transformational time for individuals, which could also be a good thing, not always a bad thing. And so now in September, we're seeing this start to rise to the surface. We're seeing this start to play out, where this huge, awful event happens, and that one event is now changing the trajectory of what happens moving forward. And so I think it's helpful just to know that as an individual, it's helpful to know like, hey, the world is not ending, but we are certainly going through a very, very transformational time collectively and individually. And so it's good to know that so you can know what to expect, so you can work on grounding yourself, so you can work on prioritizing your own energy, making sure that you are not getting so caught up in the politics of the world, in the chaotic energy of the larger things at play, that you start to lose sight of your own life, or you start to lose your own energy. You get caught up in all of this excess external energy. So make sure that you are grounding. Make sure that you're meditating. Make sure that you are releasing energy that doesn't belong to you. Make sure you are in alignment with your life and yourself and your day-to-day reality that you are calling in, that you are aligning with, because it is very easy right now to get swept up in the energy of the external world. And yes, I understand this affects some people directly. Most of us, this does not affect necessarily on a day-to-day direct level. And so while I think it's important to stay connected and understand what's going on, because we all, of course, play a part in that, if you don't keep an eye on your own energy, you're only going to manifest more chaos and more turbulence for yourself individually. And again, in that September predictions video, I talked more about individually what people can expect to experience with this energy, because it's actually much more positive than I think what we're going through collectively. And I do want to note, because you guys know if you're here, we talk about the behind the veil spiritual topics, like what happens after death and how does the spiritual world work, and soul contracts and spirit guides and all of those things as well. And I've got episodes on all of those topics. But something to keep in mind, and this is so different. If it's somebody, like a loved one, I understand that it is so difficult to just accept something like this than it is when it's someone that we don't know personally. But something to keep in mind, and if you don't align with me here, that's totally fine. Souls, before we come to Earth and we are laying out our soul contract, what our goal is when we come to Earth, it's very fluid, meaning that it's not like here's exactly what's going to happen every day and there's no room for, there's no wiggle room. It's just like, this is what it is and here I go. Souls plan to come in with general lessons they want to learn, other souls that they want to interact with, learn lessons with, and all of that. But there is a lot of room for free will and for individual decisions. And soul contracts change all the time. But most of the time, when someone has, not always, but most of the time, when someone has something like this where there is an early exit or, like a traumatic ending, most of the time, this was a possibility that they knew could happen when they wrote their soul contract. Like sometimes what will happen is a soul will say, these are my goals and, this is the legacy I want to leave and, this will be the impact of my death at any given point. Because you have to remember when our souls come here, they don't see it the same way as we do on this human level because we are completely blocked, not completely, but we are very blocked from the soul perspective when we are down here because it's like we're immersed in our own play. We're immersed in our own movie, right? And we are very strongly tied to the physical and the 3D and the people around us and our life around us. We don't have a good picture while we are on Earth of, the bird's eye view of our incarnation in terms of like, this is just one movie. We live out so many different movies, so many different lifetimes. This is just one individual movie. Our soul does not see it as this end-all be-all like we do when we're here living out the human experience. And so it's inconceivable for many people to believe that we would sign up for the possibility of a tragic ending. And I'm not projecting this onto Charlie Kirk. I do not know his soul contract. I do not know what his soul had in mind for his exact ending. However, from tuning into this, from doing my own research, from reading books, from hearing personal experiences, and all sorts of other things, what I have come to understand is that your soul will sign up for difficult or even traumatic experiences because of the aftermath, whether that's a personal lesson that they want to learn, whether it's a lesson for someone else to learn, or in the case of Charlie Kirk, and again, this is a possibility, but the collective wave that would happen after the fact, meaning that it's very possible that his soul signed up, yes, one of my exit points, if things unfold this way, if this timeline goes this way, then one of my potential exit points could be, this very public assassination. I don't know. And while as humans, it's very difficult, again, to comprehend that anybody could want that or could allow that sort of tragedy to be experienced by, like, your wife and your children. From a soul perspective, oftentimes it's looked at as, yes, I know this is going to be very traumatic and this is going to be a horrifyingly difficult experience. The impact that it will have long term will benefit the collective in a way that staying alive could not. And again, I'm not saying that this was absolutely what happened. I'm just telling you from a soul perspective what often happens in cases like this. And so I just want to offer that perspective from a spiritual lens. It does not make what happened any easier to digest or any less horrific. But I do think it can sometimes be helpful to kind of look at the bird's eye view spiritual perspective to understand how these things play out in a way that from your soul's perspective are ultimately doing a lot of good. Many assassinations that have taken place really made a huge, huge impact on the collective. Oftentimes it woke people up to truths or to uncovering things that they otherwise would not have. And often, very often, it changes the entire trajectory of our country and our history. And I absolutely believe that this is one of those cases. So my point being, this episode really, I just wanted to serve as hopefully an opportunity to unify people and just kind of look at things from a bird's eye view, to look at this besides the fact that it was obviously a horrible, awful, traumatic event. But now that it's happened, hopefully be able to see the good that his legacy can leave behind. And again, not because you agree with everything that he said, but because it gives us an opportunity as people to separate ourselves from the establishment and to unify as human beings, as a nation. So I don't really like to talk much about political things on this podcast, but I really did want to use this current event just to point to the larger collective energies that are going on and what we can do with these energies now that we're in the middle of it. And so if nothing else, I hope that this episode was just an opportunity to think and to consider new perspectives that maybe you hadn't considered, or just to help you sort through your own beliefs, your own energy, and where you want to be. So I'm going to wrap up this episode here, and we will be back to our regular scheduled programming in the next episode. But hang in there. This is a really intense time, and whatever is going on in your life, I hope that you've got new opportunities and good things on the other side of all of your tower moments. So that's it for today. Thank you for listening, and I will see you on the next episode of Dare Me to Prosper.